So hi there, everyone, and welcome to this webinar this morning. We are just going to wait a minute or so more before we kick in, but you're all warmly welcome here today, and we're really looking forward to getting started with the topic in a short moment. Okay, so I see it's 10 a.m. In the UK for all of us that are based here. So I think it's time to get started. And I'm actually just going to stop the screen share there just for a second, so you're not all looking at a big slide. And we can just see all of us as presenters there. And it's really great to have you all with us this morning. Thank you very much for taking the time. Let's dive right in and get into the topic for today. Many of us, when we think about business growth through people, will have heard expressions like, if you want to grow your business, you need to grow your people. It sounds catchy, but this isn't just management jargon. It's a proven strategy for some of the world's most successful businesses. And yet it's really not that simple to achieve. And that's what we're here to address today, breaking it down to a few different areas to discuss more. So we'll be looking at areas like developing a people strategy that supports 2022 growth plans, creating a focused and strong leadership team to deliver these plans, attracting, training, and retaining the best talent to achieve that target growth, and also looking at employing overseas talent as a means to widening the talent pool. We don't have loads of slides today. Most of this is about the discussion, but I am going to share my screen and bring up some slides briefly now as we do a few introductions to our speakers for today. So just to kick off, my name is Toby Huff, and I am Director of People and Culture for Europe at HiBob. And it's my pleasure to be your host for the next sort of 45 minutes or so. I'm delighted to be joined by Ally Maughan, founder of People Puzzles, and Janna Vidal, Human Resources Specialist from Globalization Partners. Now, by way of an introduction and about them and their organizations, I'll let them tell you a bit more about it themselves. And let's pass over to you first, Ally. So over to you.
Hi, Toby. It's great to be with you this morning, and fantastic to be talking about this subject, something that we talk a lot about at People Puzzles. So just to give you a quick introduction about who we are. Well, I started People Puzzles 11 years ago, and we've got 60 HR directors working in a portfolio part-time way across over 300 different small, medium-sized, but mainly ambitious businesses that are seeking to grow. And that's what we do. We help businesses that want to grow rapidly or move overseas or increase their profits, hit their targets, and they know that the way to do that is through their people. So we take away all that people stress and help the leaders of the business to focus on what they do best, which is running the business. So we do a lot of developing people plans and planning for growth and helping ambitious businesses get where they want to get to.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Ally. Let's pass over to you now, Janna, to tell us a bit about Globalization Partners.
Thank you very much, Toby. Nice to meet you, everyone online. Greetings and all the best. Thank you very much for joining. I'm HR specialist at Globalization Partners, and Globalization Partners is the professional employer of record and we help our customers to grow internationally. So we are present in more than 180 countries worldwide, and our HR team, HR specialists speak over 24 foreign languages. So we are here also to support our customers, to help them grow, to expand, and to install in the international markets. And thanks to all hard work of our HR specialists, we have around 98% of customer satisfaction ratings. And yeah, so great to be here, and thank you very much, Toby.
Thanks so much, Janna, for that overview. And we'll be leaning into both of your expertise in the discussion this morning. Now that you've both explained a bit about your organizations, I do want to take a moment just to tell you a bit about Hi Bob. Bob is a modern forward-thinking people management platform. It's a system of engagement, if you like, and it's designed to meet the unique needs of modern, mid-sized, multinational businesses. It allows you to automate and scale your HR processes, develop your people and connect your teams, and to help your business and your employees grow faster and stronger, no matter where they are located in the world. Our global team serves over 1,400 customers and across a pretty big reach, more than 100 countries. Collectively, that works out at about over 100,000 employees that use Bob around the world. And we feel so fortunate to help drive and support employee happiness by delivering exceptional employee experiences. So that's a little bit of an intro, and actually a chance for us now to move into our first topic of discussion for today. And I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen at this point, given that we'll leave the questions really can come through the discussion. So let's bring back the speaker views there with Ali and Janna. So to kick us off on this pretty massive topic around people strategy, when I was reflecting on this, I thought it used to be key. It used to be that the key to business growth kind of lay with things like sales, new products and services, rather than through people. But in recent times, we've seen the people angle feature much more heavily. For example, we've heard things about the risk that the Great Resignation poses to not just actual headcount and teams, but to the business's ability to grow and scale as per their plans. So Ali, I'm going to come to you first. Do you think it's now widely accepted that people are at the heart of business growth and therefore need to be in these business plans? Or do we still see that we need to actually proactively ensure that that the people agenda is kind of making it onto the planning roadmap?
Of course, it's interesting speaking on a webinar about people, because I imagine the people who've tuned into this are committed to having people on the agenda, and they would have some element of a people plan. But the interesting thing about the companies that we work with is I'd say only half of them have got a written business plan when we start working with them. And so actually it's really surprising. Loads of businesses that are ambitious, they want to grow, they want to scale rapidly, but actually if they haven't sort of been forced to write a detailed business plan to get investment, they maybe haven't clearly articulated even what the business is there to do. So they wouldn't have written down what the sales is going to achieve in the next year, what marketing is going to achieve, and certainly not what the people side of the business is going to try and deliver. So one of the things we often do when we start working with a client is we say, right, let's clarify that. Let's facilitate those discussions. Let's get to the point where we've got your strategy on a page so that it's in a format that can be shared with the whole team. We can get that alignment. We can get that clarity about what we're really here to do. And then we can go and do the people planning in a really proactive way. So I'd say there's definitely some enlightened businesses out there. And I agree with you, the media and, the business thinking is definitely all about how we can get people on that agenda and keep those plans as really important to the heart of the business. But in reality, out there's loads of businesses that just haven't got to that point yet in terms of their organization, their maturity. So it's a journey we've got to keep going on, and we've got to keep facilitating.
Yeah, Ali, I really like that take. So it's kind of really, we can't assume that just because this has made it a little bit more onto the agenda in popular rhetoric, that it is absolutely the case across the board with every business. And the place that people hold in those businesses depends on where they are in that journey. Janna, how does that resonate with your experiences in terms of the relative maturity of, the people's position with business planning when it comes to looking to the future years? What have you come across?
Yeah, absolutely. I can see the tendency that, as Ali said, there is a kind of lack of business planning structured based on the situation that we face with COVID. And specifically, if we talk about people approach, there is as a specification on corporate culture. So many companies, they have the business plan probably in place and the corporate culture, but today with this new situation of COVID, remote work, and people being locked for a long time at home, this overall aspect raises a lot of questions with the businesses, how to engage and motivate employees, how to make sure that we provide this safe environment, and how to make sure that the business linked to the people engagement, and how to, as you said earlier, Toby, how to retain those people, how to attract the great talents who will move our businesses forward. So overall, the change that we face today impact a lot the businesses, and a lot of aspects to discuss, and a lot of things that happening affect people's mind. So we need to be very careful on that. And human resources role significantly increased as a strategic business partner to the businesses, where we are not only considered as administrational specialist or process-oriented function, but also strategic partners to the business leaders in order to advise to the business how to be linked to the business strategy, to the business plan, and how to create this inclusive corporate culture in order to make sure that we meet all people motivation and engagement, and to put it all together in order to move this forward.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Janna, just a quick housekeeping note. I can hear you, but I can't see you. I don't know if your camera is switched on. Just one thing to flag.
Sorry.
There we go. So that's a really interesting point, though, around HR themselves becoming more and more of a strategic function. I know that's something that we hear a lot being talked about recently. And I guess that leads me to a next area to dig into, which is that when we think about business planning and the people agenda's place in that business planning, is it something then that needs to happen sort of owned and run by the people team for the people team? Or is it something which is done much more in our HR business partner space, where we should be pairing up with the leaders of the different functions? And Ali, when you answered initially, you talked about how you're often working with leaders of other parts of the business to really understand what they're trying to achieve first. So what's your take on that? Should we be doing business planning from an HR angle only and then bringing it to the business later on? Do we start with the business? Like, how do we actually go about building these plans?
I mean, I personally think that HR going off on their own and making their own secret plans is a terrible idea, really. And actually, because people are in every department, they're doing all of the jobs in the business. I mean, every single, important function in the business is run by a person. So HR actually has to sort of interweave through all of those things, as does finance. Everybody gets paid. Everybody has a number and some units against their name. And actually splitting any business planning into department by department, in my view, is not the right way to do it. What we need to do is, as a group of senior leaders, we need to come together and be really aligned about what the issues are facing the business. And then your job as the leader of that department is to translate that business strategy into what then you need to do to enable and to facilitate that business plan becoming a reality. So HR, in a way, it's a problem that it becomes its own department, because actually how people behave and how they do their jobs and whether they meet their KPIs and achieve the things that they need to for the business to be successful is actually really the functioning of the whole business. So yeah, I absolutely am convinced the people plan should be sort of underpin the business plan and say, how are we going to actually deliver this with the people that we've got? Where are the spaces? What training do people need? Who do we need to hire? How do people need to behave? You know, and then there's the sort of supporting things like, well, so how do we make sure everyone gets paid on time and we have their records and we're doing that compliantly? And, you know, then zipping back up to the more strategic stuff, how do we make sure we've got a culture that is supportive and engaging and people are doing their best work and they're motivated? And actually, if you can get everybody pointing in the same direction and working together to deliver the business plan, we've got something that works. We all know what it's like when you watch a 6-year-old football team and how all the kids run in every direction or they all run after the ball at the same time. And actually it makes a really dysfunctional game. And then if you compare that to, you know, an elite team who all know their role, and you've got the defenders, you've got the attackers. I mean, I really shouldn't go too far with this football analogy because I'm going to make some mistakes in a minute. But, you know, you can see the difference, can't you, when people are actually doing the jobs that they're supposed to be doing and you are facilitating something that has a bigger purpose. So, yeah, it can't be separated.
Interesting to challenge that a second, and I want to see, Janna, what your take, because I did hear many areas, Ally, where it can't be separated, where it really needs to be in that proper business partner space as an enabler. But then you also did talk about some things which I wonder if the business would really just be interested in or care about. So things they want to make sure they get paid on time, but how we do it doesn't really bother them. And I'm wondering if there are, you know, Janna, what's your view? Are there certain components of the HR plan that are vital to the running of the business that the wider business will be very happy for us to just go off and do on our own?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very interesting topic, indeed. And I recently saw a Harvard Business Review post-pandemic survey where they mentioned that the companies in pandemic world, they have to reflect on the following 3 questions. And it was interesting to see. So the first is how the business really make money today. So what affects the business? Because with the pandemic situation, we know that the workflow of the companies changed, and probably also our customers' needs change. So do we provide, for example, the restaurants, they were closing, but do they provide delivery, home delivery or something like this? So do they adapt to this, and what really makes our income? The second topic was the second question about our main stakeholders and how their behavior affects business. So people, they stay at home, what kind of new behaviors have been adopted by people? Once again, they miss interaction. We more willing to have delivery services, home delivery of different goods or services. So it's also interesting to understand. And also what people behavior looks like after the pandemic itself. So what affects people? What are the values for the employees? And what they're looking for. And as you said, Toby, earlier, a lot of resignation was coming during and after pandemic world because people, they were reevaluating their values and thought about the job, their work-life balance, and what is important for them in real life. And speaking about the HR strategy, I think it should be really aligned, but it's very important to understand that overall role of the leadership team, first of all, has changed because the leaders today, they don't have much of visibility on the employees. So they miss this transparency and maybe meeting their teams and collaboration in the office. So they have to have this kind of building the trust and understanding how to approach to people and to still motivate and engage them. And also it's important to make sure that we have in place strong and capable HR specialists and HR partners who building this new world together with the business leaders in order to kind of create this together and partner. So I'm really strong believer in the partnership between the leadership and the HR.
So it feels like there's some consensus there between you both. And I guess it makes total sense, doesn't it? We use as a buzzword in HR a lot that we need to be more of a strategic function or as like a buzz phrase. And I wonder, and I think, Ally, you alluded to this earlier on, like some businesses are just further down the line maturity-wise with the reality of being a strategic partner, and others less so. That, I think, is a really interesting nuance for us to capture from today, is that we can't see all businesses being in the same place. But what Janna was just leading us onto there around the role of leadership in terms of making sure these plans come to life. I mean, of course, I don't think we dispute, even looking back to sort of traditional business planning in the past, that that is something that comes from leadership, and there is a top-down element to it. But Janna, you were alluding to a slightly different take there as well, which is that leaders together with HR business partners have a role in really getting that buy-in and embedding those business plans across the business so that everyone gets behind it. It leads into your football team, football pitch analogy, Ally, of people sort of understanding where they fit. And so let's build on this topic of leadership then, in terms of really seeing these plans come to fruition with success. First of all, and Janna, let's start with you, because you brought us onto this topic. How do you think you get that leadership team working cohesively? How do you get them working together to deliver the plan? I'm thinking less so about the wider business buy-in, but more for them as a leadership team across the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I said, today leadership leaders, they always had and wore the face of the company in front of the people, in front of the population, and their specific teams. So today, against this specific situation of COVID, leaders, they need to also adapt and to develop the skills, their people skills. So I would say that there are a few topics that are important to be considered by the new leaders, by the leaders who want to succeed. So leaders, they must know the people. They must be connected. People, their teams, they need to know their population and create inclusive culture. So today, again, with the remote work, with hybrid type of approach, we need to make sure that we have we set up the approach where people feel inclusive. And it's very difficult to live in the time with the back-to-back meetings and online communication every time. And it's completely different towards what we had in the past, for example, because most of the time today, even if we connect on the meeting, and it was a research published by Gartner, that people most of the time, they look at themselves during the Zoom meetings, during the online meetings. So it's the main point of visibility for someone who is presenting or participating in the meeting, to look at themselves, which is not possible when you interact with people face to face. So also, leaders need to be mindful about creating, motivating, and engaging environment, how to celebrate the success, how to make sure that the goals and objectives are communicated clearly. Once again, coming back to the corporate culture, how to make sure that this is visible, this is communicated, and this is clear for everyone, and not just this is, our plan. It's somewhere else, or somewhere accessible probably to the employees, but no one knows where to find it. So it's very important to be clear and specific, and also be clear and specific towards the employees what needs to be done to succeed in the roles. So this also kind of people-oriented approach. And also for the leadership team, it's very important, if we speak about multi offices, multi locations, it's very important to understand people, cultures, local best practices, compliance, and legal obligations. So this, I would say, few things that leadership today need to be aware of.
So yeah, you've teed up a few different, I think there's actually, it's worth us unpacking some of this a little bit, because there's a few kind of quite big topics even sitting under that even what you were talking about there, and I'd love to come back to that in a minute, around the role of leadership to really ensure they're driving that growth when they're in a multi-location setting, and equally also kind of how, as you were saying before, how they kind of communicate to get that buy-in from the wider team and get the clarity. But I'm interested even in taking up a level higher than that, and just thinking about HR's role in really ensuring that the leadership team work together to make sure that they're driving business growth through people. So we all know, I mean, when leaders are sitting there at the top of the business, they come with strong perspectives, with strong viewpoints. Ali, in any of the work that you've done, how do you try and get that cohesion across the leadership team for all of those components that really impact the people in the business?
Yeah, and we work with a lot of founder-run entrepreneurial businesses, and there's a sort of stereotype, isn't there, around entrepreneurs, and there's a reason for that. Many of them are very opinionated, strong-willed. You know, they've built something out of nothing, and so they have very clear ideas about what they want, and that has an impact on the whole functioning of the senior leadership team and the culture of the business a bit more widely. And when you're trying to build a senior leadership team, whether it's for the first time or you've had to, you know, you've lost some people, you've replaced some people, or maybe because you're growing, you actually need people with stronger skills, new skill sets, wider business experience, you need to go through that process of saying, how can we go from a group of individuals that all think very strongly about things to a cohesive team where everybody is coming together to achieve something? And that can be challenging. And, you know, you've got your strong leader at the top probably, but you might also have some strong people sort of trying to drag people in another direction. So one of the tools that we use at People Puzzles is the framework put together by Patrick Lencioni, and his book is called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And that's become a program called The 5 Behaviors of a Team. You see there's a slightly more positive spin on that. And the 5 things that he encourages a team to work through is firstly trust. How do we trust each other? And that kind of trust isn't I'm always late for a meeting, so I'll always be late. It's much more of a getting to know each other, vulnerability-based trust. Then they work through conflict. How do we disagree with each other so that everybody can voice their opinion? We can have a really good debate, and then we can agree on something that is better than it would have been if we hadn't engaged in that passionate debate. So that after conflict, he talks about commitment. How do we come together to commit to something? And that's fairly self-explanatory. The 4th one is about how do we hold each other accountable? So when someone steps out of line behaviorally, or they're not meeting their targets, their department isn't shaping up, they're not achieving things, maybe they come to a meeting having not done the actions they agreed from the last one, which is really common. How do we hold that person accountable as a group so that we're not allowing sort of weak links in our SLT? And then finally, if we can really tackle that one, which is hard, how do we come together to actually achieve results? So if we're holding people accountable, it's for a purpose. It's to really start our business flying. And it's a great program to go through, and you can do it really quickly in a day. You can take a number of sort of weeks or months over it, but it's about saying, how do we go from a group of individuals to a cohesive team? And then how do we check in on that as we carry on working together? So, you know, I'm sure there's loads of other programs out there, but the point is, can we commit as an SLT group to saying teamwork is going to get us somewhere further than us as a bunch of individuals running around? And it's an amazing journey to go on. And I've only ever seen teams do a program like that and come out really so much stronger afterwards.
Ali, I really like where you sort of took that in terms of one of the most impactful ways that we can get a leadership team to really drive forward that growth, including the people agenda, is to have them as a very well-functioning team holistically across everything that they encounter. And actually, as an aside, for any of our attendees that are not familiar with Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions, or the more positive spin, Ali, was it 5 behaviors that you said? Sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It is so applicable. And I find in my kind of business partner role in various companies I've worked in, that the guidance that people get from the sort of step-by-step breakdown of team function from that work is so relevant. It crops up day in, day out. Okay, so that's one take then, which is that what we really can be doing is focusing on the overall high functioning of that leadership team, and then a lot of stuff should then follow, including components from the people agenda. That's really interesting. I really like that take. And I think you've also touched on why it's so important for business growth to have them as a cohesive group. I think something I've observed in any kind of team decision making is that, you know, you're going into the discussion, you hope you won't have consensus from the outset because you're bringing in different views and you're going to debate and then reach a different outcome. But if that leadership team is then able to present a really united front because they're bought into how that decision was made, and they can tie how that decision was made back to the identity, the values, the culture of the business, it's much easier to then get buy-in from the rest of the team. Does that resonate with you? I mean, Janna, you're nodding, would you challenge me on that, or do you agree?
No, absolutely. I love this example, Ali, and yeah, to be absolutely aligned with you. And I think, Ali, there is also even bigger impact for me from these 5 behavioral principles, because I know them from Patrick Lencioni, and it's really great. The way you educate the management team allows the managers, first of all, learn the best practices, face the difficult situations, like, for example, conflicts, because we all know that conflicts, it's very difficult situation, and a lot of people are afraid of that. One, the constructive and positive conflict management can lead to great ideas and project management. So this is really a huge topic. But saying all that, I think this knowledge brought to the leadership team will allow the leaders to bring this also towards their team, to approach their team in exactly the same way, and hopefully downscale it and train their teams in the same way, and create this cohesiveness and motivation and engagement with their team. So really, yeah, really nice topic.
Janna,
the challenge, I think, when you're... Oh, sorry, Toby, can I jump in? The challenge with building a senior leadership team is, of course, that if people are coming to it from their departments, they can feel like their number one team is the people they work with every day in marketing or in product or in services. And so they feel like they're coming to an SLT meeting representing their department. And actually what you really want to build is a company where being on the SLT is your number one team. So the people that you're primarily responsible to are your peer leaders at the top of the business. And that creates a completely different team environment, because you're not coming to sort of defend or to represent. You're actually coming to engage for the good of the business.
I think that I really like that. And to Janna, what you were saying in terms of how that can then trickle down the business, I think that's equally as true on that point, Ali. We're actually doing something at the moment with our European manager community at Highbot. So we have global teams. They all report into C-level that are ultimately in a variety of countries globally. But we're here on the ground in Europe, and we know that key to the success of collaboration across all of the teams is having a really mutual understanding across all of our team leaders, not as representatives as their group, but as a community of team leads that can lean into one another to help them learn through the challenges day to day. And we've seen some really nice organic things take place just by giving them a forum where they share what are some of the challenges that they're facing right now. We facilitate that discussion and say, okay, so 3 of you are facing the same sort of challenge right now. We had one last week on hiring, hardly a surprise, but actually it was more specifically, how do we carve out time in the day with the volume of hiring we need to do, whilst also managing our team. It's a very tactical thing, but this is the kind of challenges we face day to day. And 3 people voiced the same challenge, and one person said, actually, I've had a bit of success with this. Let's take this offline and I'll share my ideas with you. And then they all went and met up the next day. And it was wonderful to see that. And I think that's the kind of thing that we can also facilitate from an HR angle, which is to say, yes, you're all coming from different, you are representing your people, you're there to be the voice for them, but you're also in a safe space with a big group, with a group of peers who understand and may have experienced some of the challenges that are universal to you. It's really very interesting. Janna, you mentioned earlier about leadership needing to be able to adapt if they're working in a multi-location context. I mean, arguably, we're all working in multi-location right now, in one way or another. And so, is there anything tactical that you'd advise on that leaders are aware of, or can do when they are in that multi-location setting? Like, what should they be doing to ensure success from their people?
Yeah, absolutely. Few tips, probably. So this is also part of the change management approach, where you really need to be genuine with your people, with your peers, with your teams. And it's very important to be present. So communication via email or written something that sent to the employees, it's not enough. So it's very important to spend a proper time with the employees, and probably also as an advice to set up sessions where people can speak outside of their professional profiles, but about themselves. So know your people, be genuine with people, and make sure that you have these small things that you know about your people as a leader. This helps a lot, and I also believe, as I said previously, that this way leaders, they create this environment where they speak to their peers, to their teams, and this go to everyone, between everyone. So it affects the corporate culture when we have this genuine and approach towards our team. As an example, for example, we have sometimes team calls with our peers, and we share, I don't know, the best location, what is your best movie you saw. So it's very small question that you think that maybe it will not bring a lot, but when people start talking, first of all, create trustful environment, so people, they're willing to talk, they're willing to share something, which they would never say in the business meeting. And also you can see the exchange between the team members and kind of create this environment where people, they just link together. And as you said, probably they will go offline and link together between them. So it's really great to create this motivational environment. And once again, a key element is about communication. So clear goals, clear expectations, because again, a lot of conflicts from the HR perspective, we can see when the managers say, for example, the leaders, they can say, this was done in the wrong way, the employees or the employee that does it in the way that I didn't expect it. But the question is, have the goals, objectives, and expectations been clear to the employees? Do your employees know what to expect and what is the key to success in their specific role? So, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, there's a link again back to Ali. You were talking about Patrick Lencioni's work and the importance of trust there, and all the little things that we learn about each other organically in an in-person environment don't happen when we're behind a screen. And I like that point, Janna, about not underestimating the power of these little facilitation exercises that break down some of those things. Anything you'd add to that, Ali?
Yeah, well, one thing we do in nearly all of our virtual meetings is that we do a quick check-in, and we do it in two ways. One is just to ask an icebreaker question. I love that, the movie question transcends every culture, doesn't it? But another one we do is you just give a score for how you feel your week's going in terms of 10 out of 10 for business, and then 10 out of 10 for personal, and sometimes we do a 10 out of 10 for wellness as well. And then people just have to explain what their biggest issue is, which is nearly always personal, not work. Again, it's just building that connection. But the other thing I think we found interesting over this period of time of hybrid and virtual working is that now when we're running leadership training, typically something that you would have run maybe in each individual country, and people would have come into a room to meet a trainer, and it's all about who's in the classroom at that moment, is we've been seeing a massive uptake in running virtual, much shorter training sessions for people, and then they can join from anywhere in the world. And that's great for a number of reasons. One is you can suddenly do a 30-minute training session or 45 minutes, and you can give people bite-sized stuff that doesn't mean paying a trainer to come in for a whole day, and then if you're ill that day or if you're in another country, you just miss it. And secondly, it means that all your leaders are on the same page. So if you're trying to develop a particular culture or upskill people in whatever it is, giving feedback or being a great manager, or I don't know, just information about how the company's being run and where the business is going, you can get everybody on together, and you can use breakout rooms and all that stuff that we learn all about during the pandemic, but taking the best of that and using that going forward to really be much more inclusive around people from wherever they're working in the country or in the world.
Yeah, what's interesting is we're kind of moving away, I think, from some of the sort of, in this leadership discussion, we've moved away a little bit from just thinking about leadership and actually thinking about how that trickles down throughout the organization. And what I'm hearing in both of your answers there is also just the impact on overall employee engagement. And we know engagement links to things like retention, but it also can link to the way that your company is presented through channels like Glassdoor, and how that can also help with attraction. So we think back to the headline topic of today's discussion, and and then back to some of the other levers that we might want to pull when it comes to ensuring that the people side of the business is really driving forward growth. We mentioned the Great Resignation earlier. Attracting, training, retaining people. Let's assume there's a truth there that we need that in order to achieve our growth goals. You both have touched on some things that we can do in that respect. Seeing more and more remote work / using technology over video, etc., as a benefit rather than as an obstacle. Ali, your example about being able to bring everybody together globally in a way that you wouldn't be able to do before is really interesting, as seeing that as a benefit. And Janna, as you were talking about those like quick win questions you can ask, something I've really loved is seeing people's Zoom backgrounds when they're at home. And like, I'm personally not a big fan of the blurred background, right? I'm like, no, don't blur it. Let me see the kind of the room you're in. Let's talk about the books behind you. Let's talk about why you're having to work at a dining room table or kitchen table. Who else are you sharing the house with right now? It's another, actually a way of creating a trust layer that really, I think, can link to team performance and therefore things like retention that we didn't have before. So there are benefits in some of the new ways that we're having to work in. But what else can we be doing on the, on attracting? Let's start with attracting. How important is something like your employer brand in order to attract the best talent? Are candidates really doing lots of research on that, or is it more just, the interview process alone? What do you think, Ali?
I mean, I think it's an interesting time because, we're hearing that there's a massive skills shortage in the UK and that we are really candidate poor. We desperately need to fill loads of vacancies. And my personal view is that we're going to actually have to become a lot better at training people, because we're not going to necessarily be able to hire people with the right skills to come into the jobs that we've got. And I feel a bit, I've worked in that small and mid-sized business space my whole career, which is some 20 years. And I think what we've sort of relied on in that size business is we've said, we'll let the big companies train people and then we'll hire people that are pretty well trained. And I feel like those days are kind of over for us. And actually what we need to do is to offer amazing opportunities that are flexible, that have great training, that mean people are treated like individuals, that means that we're training our managers so that people are managed and led by people who've got some skills in those areas instead of people that have never had any training at all. Again, it feels to me like SMEs can often be behind the curve with bothering to train people really well. So I feel like we're facing this difficult time because we still need to hire all those people, but we've got to really revolutionize how we bring them in, how we induct them, how we train them, how we support them, and be a place where people are motivated and encouraged to continue to develop. So I think my sort of summary of that is that it's going to take more time and be more expensive to bring people in. But if we can get our heads around that now and plan for that and have some good systems internally, we're not going to waste months and months and months of hiring people that, that we just never fill those vacancies. So I think we need to sort of wise up and get ready for that.
Very interesting. And also, when you were talking about training, it was pretty broad, wasn't it? It wasn't just skills, but in terms of sort of technical skills, but it was also broader business skills, people management being one of them. And I think, on this topic of how do we make sure we really attract, train, retain the best people, again, it's a stock phrase, but there's truth behind it. People leave, managers, not companies. And so equally, I mean, I've worked in big corporates, I've worked in tiny startups and scale-ups, and the latter, the startups and scale-up space, we can be guilty of fast-tracking people into people management positions without giving them any support. And of course, there's a double loss there. We lose a very good individual contributor in them, but we also get a negative knock-on effect for all of the people that they're now managing without the right training. And so if we play forward your example there, Ali, and instead of rushing that person into a people manager position, we had put them on we've been less impatient, and we trained them to really be able to manage well, we would have been able to test their motivations to see if it was something they really wanted to do. And we would have mitigated some of the risk about them then stepping in without any fault of their own, being an unqualified and dreadful manager that then turns their team away from the business. So
managing people. managing people is hard. We've got to give people feedback that they don't want to hear. I don't know, certainly in the UK, we're terrible at giving people negative feedback because we find it very embarrassing and very personally painful. So people need loads of training to be able to do that, and they need their hand being held, and they need to be coached and encouraged to do it. So it's a whole revolution of managing people well that we need to get to grips with.
Yeah, as an aside, I know that there's sort of a talk out there, and this is another topic, but the feedback piece around people's development is very relevant, I think, to the business growth, driving growth through people, today's topic. But I know that there's a utopian view out there that we shouldn't have performance cycles, like we shouldn't need them. People should just be giving this feedback day to day. I'm very happy to take this offline with any of you or any of our attendees, but I just think that is totally unrealistic. I think that is, I believe in it as a concept. I don't think it will ever work in reality because people shy away from giving feedback. People's day-to-day gets too busy. It's out of our comfort zone having those difficult conversations, so we end up not doing it. And the point of a performance cycle is at least forcing us into a moment to slow down, scrutinize, think, give ourselves a moment to pause. And I think a role that HR can play in that is making it far less admin heavy and a chore and an eye-rolling moment, but rather this is a gift. This time that we're offering the business to slow down, scrutinize, offer feedback to one another, it's a gift. It's a gift for your growth. It's a gift for the business's growth. Janna, I want to ask you something on the talent pool piece though, because you talked to us earlier on about having catering to a workforce that is kind of global, is located all around the place. And do you think that this is a lever that we should be looking to pull as well, especially for the UK in a post-Brexit world, with the skills gaps that we're finding, with the lack of talent that we're finding on the market? Should we be looking overseas as well as one solution, not the only solution, but as one solution to ensuring we get the right people?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with the COVID situation, everything changed a lot. So the companies have better accessibility to international talents, and there are a lot of impact on the cost and wider knowledge skills. So the companies have a really better accessibility, but now the question is how to identify the right talent. So we come back again to the strategic planning and corporate culture. Do we identify those values within our company, and do we know what to expect? And then it's very important to set up the right, of course, interview process and make sure that we gain all this information in order to hire right candidates. And in order to build strong team, strong cooperation, it's very important to make sure that we have right people within the company who respect and who align with our values. So, coming back to what Ali said about the talents, I like very much the way of how we need to train, and all the training and engagement of those people starts before the onboarding, before signing the contracts. It starts from the interview process, from employer branding, from employee satisfaction. And as we know nowadays, it's very important for the candidates to also have a choice, have a voice on understanding who is the employer. Do they have this security? Because a lot of people today, we are looking for the security aspect in our life, in professional life. Flexibility, what is approach towards the employees, and what employees from inside think about the employer, and what and how they were treated during this difficult situation of COVID. So overall aspect is very complex, very interesting, and I think in terms of going again internationally, it's very important for the leadership team again to understand: are we ready to go there? Do we know everything about this international locations? And to your point, Toby, about the constructive feedback, it's so important, and one of the topics that discovered by professor of Lindsay Business School, Erin Meyer, where she speaks literally about comparing and seeing the differences between different cultures. So if we want to go internationally and globally, we need to understand the aspect. For example, we need to understand how the feedback perceived by different cultures. And the example was given between the French professional, who is very straightforward and they need a clear expectation and analysis on the performance, and the US manager, who was really rounding around the nice things, because in the US, one of the traditions speaks first of all about 3 positive things and then go to the negative feedback. So for the French employee, it was completely unclear what was wrong. And at the end of the meeting, they went away with a really happy face, saying that everything went well, when the performance feedback should be a negative. So it's very interesting to approach this, and I think it's very important to understand, do we approach it in the really right way? For example, Anglo-Saxon cultures, they are more approachable and open to written communication. When, for example, if you go more to south of France, Italy, Spain, until the moment, and I have it from my experience, until the moment you don't meet with people, you don't have lunch with them, pasta or coffee, you will not have any connection and efficiency on the work. So it's really interesting to understand all this and to get ready. And I think the success really will follow.
Yeah, but I would say again to any of our audience that if you haven't come across Erin Meyer's Culture Map book and you're working in an international environment or going to be, it's a must read. It's excellent. I was recommended to read it before I joined HiBob, and I'm so glad I did, not least to get used to some of the nuances of the different cultures that we work in. Timekeeping in an Israeli company, timekeeping is brought up by Erin Meyer in this book, and I was much better prepared for things like, rigid agendas and timekeeping, and it's just a really nice reminder that different is different, not wrong. And having read the book, I was more open-minded to these different approaches, and I'd come from a company that was very rigid on timekeeping and agendas for meetings. I'm now used to starting meetings with some of my colleagues here at HiBob, especially the ones that are based in Tel Aviv, and the agenda seems to go out the window, and I still have this like panic, and I think that we're not going to get through this. But actually, when I reflect at the end of the meeting, we have. We have got through it, and that's just that reminder. Now, I'm conscious of time, and I'm delighted to see that we've got a few questions coming through on the Q&A. Just looking most recent, Rika, could we repeat the name of the book that we just mentioned? It's Erin Meyer's, is the author, M-E-Y-E-R, and the book is Culture Map, and it's excellent. I would highly recommend it. And Caleb's asked a question. Let me just read this out. Do we give leaders or potential leaders enough practice time to engage with people properly, like they do with their technical skills? In my opinion, we promote technically competent people into leadership roles rather than people who are amazing people leaders. I think people leadership is essential for the future, and ironic that we're trying to make being human a superpower. Really nicely put, Caleb. Ali, let me get your reaction to that. What would you say to Caleb?
I mean, this is an age-old problem, isn't it? How do we grow particularly tech businesses where people need leading and managing, and yet the people with a lot of the skills to do really well in those organizations maybe don't sort of naturally sit with that amazing people leader job description? And I think, I guess there's a number of thoughts. One is that different people need different management and different leadership. And that's why something like a profiling tool can be so useful, because you can really help to identify how your team like to be managed, because some people like loads of attention and support, and other people like to be mainly left on their own and redirected and really blunt feedback, or whatever is their personality type. So different people need different management. But I've also seen some companies try to have a more technical expert being the people leader. But actually, for me, I've seen it work really successfully where you bring someone in who maybe doesn't have those technical skills, but actually their job is organizing people rather than leading them from a technical expertise perspective. So I don't think there's one size fits all. And I don't think that amazing people leaders grow on trees. I think they are really rare. And if there were so many of them around, we actually wouldn't be worrying as much with how do we train leaders and managers and how do we have our hierarchy, because there'd be people that just ooze this super skill. And I really don't meet very many of those people very often. So I think what we're always trying to do is work around and create the best of a challenging job, which is how do we have a hierarchy and a business structure that works, where we're being really clear with people about what we expect from them, and then we're being really clear about how well they're doing against those expectations. And this might be a slight aside, but my view is most people, when you give them what the expectations are, they're pretty good when you ask the right questions, identifying how good they actually are and identifying what change and help they'd like and where they're going next. So my view is we need to help people develop much better questioning skills and support skills than we necessarily do management, but maybe they're the same thing. Okay, I'm tailing off now. But look, it's the age-old problem.
Thank you, Ali. Yeah, and I'm going to keep us, because it's really great to see these questions coming in, and I'm going to just keep going through them. So Tori's asked, any advice or suggestions for HR in a startup company? I'm the first person in the HR function and would love to move beyond administrative tasks, move into more of a strategic mindset and create value in people processes all from scratch. So I'm actually going to answer this one because, Tori, I've been there in the same place. In my last role, I was the only person in HR, the first person in HR, and I completely hear you. It's very easy just to get distracted by whatever thing needs the most immediate burning platform attention. One tip I would share is whilst it was only me there, I started to think about my time and activities as if I were a full HR function. So I would classify mentally, what am I doing right now? Is it HR ops? Is it talent acquisition? Is it learning and development? Is it leadership? Is it business partnering, etc.? Across the different subdisciplines, is it D&I? And by categorizing an average week first, I could see where I was being pulled way too far rather than having the balance that I wanted. And that awareness meant that I would start to prioritize based on a couple of areas where I wanted to start seeing that balance shift. And then that gives you a reason to push back. So when you then politely say no to somebody on something, you can say, look, actually, we need to be getting in. I need to be focusing more on my D&I efforts as well as our employee engagement efforts. And so this just isn't a priority right now. And being really intentional about what activities you're doing, what outcome they're having, as if you were in a fully functioning HR team, I think can work really nicely. It gives you some data in terms of how you're spending your time. But Tori, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn afterwards, and I'm very happy to pick up more on that and share lots of, we can share notes. There's a bigger question that's come in from Sean in terms of perhaps less discreet answer that I do want to pitch to Ali and Janna, which is, what advice can you give on developing an effective and impactful people plan? And Sean, in a way, it's nice because it takes us back to the very first topic we were discussing around, are these people plans done in isolation? Are they done with the business? Ali, if you take us back there, in fact, sorry, let's go to Janna. Janna, if you take us back there now, what advice would you give around developing an effective and impactful people plan? If you had to give a one-sentence bit of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Toby. I will be very quick. So probably three points to consider as a high-level approach. I would say that it's very important to understand what are the corporate values and what you want to bring to people plan. So mention corporate goals, what are objectives for the company, what are corporate values for you as a company, and set up communication went through the leadership team, so aligned with the leaders, and use it towards people and all the environment as a transparent and frequent communication. So communication is really one of the key to success, because it's very important to make sure that people used to have this information and communication coming specifically from the HR, but about the global corporate culture in order to align everyone. Yeah.
So start with the company goals to make sure that it's aligned, and then think about how you communicate that to get buy-in. What about you, Ali? What would you say to that question?
So our people plans have 5 elements to them, and we always start with the business plan. And the 5 elements we have is leading, a whole plan around leading. The second one is culture. The third one is about talent. The fourth one is about business structure, so your sort of operating model, and the last one is about people processes. So simply under those headings, you can say, where are we now? Where do we want to be? Gap analysis. And then you say, what's the journey we need to go on to get there? I'm going to just pop back into Sian. We've got a health check you can do on our website that really helps to unpack some of that. And it's just a free tool on our website. So I'll just pop that in there if you want to. In fact, anyone's very welcome to go and take that health check.
Thank you, Ally. And thank you to those that asked questions through the Q&A. Delighted to get your reactions to our discussion and where you wanted us to dig in a bit deeper. We're pretty much at time, and I really want to thank Ally and Janna for your time so generously this morning as well in coming together to talk about this. You know, we started out with that big question, how to drive business growth through people. It's a massive topic. So we were never in sort of 55 minutes going to answer that question. The answer, I'm afraid, isn't 53 or whatever. The fact is that it touches so many different parts of not only what the HR function does, but what the business does in general. Some of the themes we covered, you know, it does start with really integrating HR into that overall business planning. It's that question that Sian just asked now, but then it trickles down into how are your leaders then creating that buy-in, communication, and generally showing up day to day across your business, whether that be global or local. It trickles into retention, attraction, training, ensuring that your people aren't just tick boxing their way through what they need to do, but thriving, growing whilst they do it, and also thinking truly globally, even if you're not necessarily a global business, because some of the challenges that global business used to face are now relevant for a lot of us, given that we've become more disparate. So I feel like that's a nice place to end. Ally, thank you. Janna, thank you. And to all of our attendees, thank you very much. We hope to see you on another webinar with us in the future. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
All the best. Bye-bye.